Hey, and welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away, the cozy corner of your week where we talk all things yarn, calm, and confidence. Today's topic is for the knitters who are feeling stuck in the slow lane. Maybe your project feels like it's dragging on, or maybe you're wondering if you're even getting better or if your project is like ever going to end. And if that's you, take a deep breath. I've got you covered. This episode is all about how to stay motivated when the progress feels slow and how to actually start loving the process again, because there are times when we're like, not feeling it. And this even goes when your scarf looks like it's literally never going to end. So let's dive into this episode. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away, the podcast for overwhelmed moms who are done with doom scrolling and ready for something slower. Hi, I am Nadine. I am a mom, a knitting coach for beginners, and proud screen time dropout who believes that peace starts with just one stitch. If you've ever craved a quiet moment to yourself, this show is your cozy permission slip. Let's trade notifications for needles and turn stress into self-care together. All right, let's talk about this whole thing of slow progress as you're working on a knitting project that is seemingly never ending. This could be something that is really big, or maybe it's something that has very thin yarn, very tiny needles that you're using, and it can take a long time, right? And it can sometimes just feel a little boring. But I want to kind of clear things up here. So slow progress is not a problem. In fact, I think slow is actually normal because this is like the whole point of, they call this slow fashion, right? For a reason. Creating something with your hands from a single strand of yarn and you're actually making a big piece is not meant to be fast. That's, you can go and buy something and then you have your fast fashion, but you're making it, and it's the whole process itself is supposed to be part of it, right? Because otherwise there's really no point in doing this. And knitting is not meant to be a race. It's a rhythm. It is also a ritual, and it's a way of reclaiming stillness in this crazy fast-moving world that can sometimes just be overwhelming. So this is like your way to come back to yourself, the way to meditate without having to meditate. And when you're feeling like you're not making progress, just kind of ask yourself this question, like, what am I measuring? What am I comparing against? Like, I'm not making progress as fast as who? And why does this matter, right? Your worth as a knitter does not come from how fast you finish a project. It may feel like that if you're looking on Instagram and you see people left and right finishing a project within a week. Let me just reassure you, I'm not one of those. For me, this whole knitting thing is, yes, I love creating things that I then can proudly wear, and I love creating beautiful things. Absolutely, that's definitely a big part of why I love knitting. But there's definitely an equal part that uses knitting as a self-care tool. And that's kind of the whole point here, especially on this podcast. We are using this as a ritual, as a routine, as a thing that you can come back to, and it doesn't matter how far in that project you are. And your worth as a knitter comes from how present you actually are while you're creating this project that you're currently working on. However, now, because I do feel like sometimes we just lose motivation as knitters, and it's like, oh my God, is this ever going to end? Because we also feel like, well, once this ends, I get to do something else, and I've been waiting to start this other project. But here are a few little mindset and habit shifts that can actually help you fall back in love with that project that might take forever, even when it feels really slow and you're kind of like over it. Right? So you might want to make a list here. If you don't have anything to write, just save the podcast episode for later and you can come back to it. But I actually have it's 5 tips that I have for you today that might help you get out of that slump and get back to loving the process. Okay, number 1, celebrate micro wins. Micro wins, not like, I knitted today for 15 hours. I made 1 row before I started dinner. That's a win. Picking up your needles after a tough day, that's a win. So anytime you actually touch your project and you do create however small of progress in that project, that's considered a win. And I would definitely focus on thinking about it that way. And this is so funny that I'm actually recording this episode today because this happened to me yesterday and the day before. The day before, I did not even have a chance to grab my project at all day long. I was like, wow, okay. And then at the end of the day, when I was getting ready to lay down, it was a toss-up between knitting and reading. And I decided to go with the book because it was just, in that moment, it was more comfortable because I have a reading light, so I didn't have to have very bright light, which I would have had to for the knitting. So I decided to read and didn't knit at all that day. And then yesterday, I made a very conscious choice. I said, if I get one row in today, then that is going to be a win because I didn't knit at all yesterday. So anything more than that is going to be considered a win. And that is exactly what happened. I ended up doing 2 rows, but it's a very long project. Like it's like 140 stitches, I think, that I'm actually knitting for one single row. So that takes a while. So 2 rows is a huge win. Takes you like 15 minutes. I mean, so that is definitely my first tip for you today, to just kind of celebrate those wins and just recognize them instead of just going through the motions and be like, okay, great, now I only did 1 row today, blah, and feel bad about it. Instead, feel good about the fact that you did 1 row instead of none. Okay, number 2, and this kind of goes a little hand in hand with that. Document your progress. So take a picture every few sessions, and I bet you will be shocked how much you actually are growing when you look back, or how much your project is growing as you look back. So obviously, if you're doing 1 row per day, and if your project is relatively small, you might have to wait 2 weeks until you take that picture. But I would definitely say every so often take a picture so that you can look back and be like, wow, actually this thing is growing. So I'm doing this and it's happening. Okay, number 3, switch up your space. Maybe you take your knitting somewhere else. Go to a coffee shop and take some time to yourself there and knit there. Or move to your porch if you normally knit on your couch. You can also just take it at night to your bedroom, and instead of reading, like I do often, just take your knitting project. I've done that many times before. I just plop a bunch of pillows behind my back so I can sit up a little straighter. And it is just so cozy because it calms you down, right? It calms your nervous system and it gets you ready for sleep. You're automatically not scrolling your phone because you just don't even have the hands to do it. And oftentimes what helps us is changing the scenery, right? And switching that up a little bit, and that can make a difference in how we're approaching that project. My extra bonus tip here is you are also having full permission to switch up your actual project. So if you're really too bored with that project and you're like, wow, I can't figure this out, I just don't want to do this one right now, and it's not bringing me joy, which also is the entire point of doing this hobby, right? Is it should be as joyful as we can have it. Switch up your project. Cast on a new one, even if you're not finished with this one yet. And maybe by just leaving that one alone for just a little bit, you will find the motivation and the spark, the joy to actually finish it. So that's just a little side note. If you are one of those people who are like, nope, I cannot start a project while I'm still working on another one, let me just tell you that was me too, until I was like, says who? Why can't I? You absolutely can. You just put that other one on hold. You can put it on some scrap yarn if you happen to use the needles. Otherwise, just leave it on those needles. Start something else and see if you can kind of recapture that spark for that other project in a couple of weeks. Number 4, find a progress partner or an accountability partner. Just send a message to a knitting friend. It can be someone you don't even know in person. There is plenty of people you can connect with either on Instagram, or you can also connect with someone in our Facebook group. I'm going to link it up in the show notes in case you're not part of it, but just send a message in there or make a post in there and say, hey, I'm knitting this thing and I'm just having a real hard time kind of staying on track here. Do you want to be my accountability partner? Because accountability usually equals motivation. If you really are eager to finish this project, I think this could be a really great way to do that. And number 5, pair your knitting with a ritual soundtrack. This could be a podcast, Hello. Hopefully you're knitting right now while you're listening to this, or it could be an audiobook. It can be a playlist that you make. But if you can make your knitting feel kind of like an experience and not a task, not this like, okay, I got to do this, I got to finish this thing. It just sounds heavy and it sounds like a chore. But if you're making it an experience, you make your favorite cup of tea or, glass of wine if it's the evening or the daytime. If you're doing it on the weekend, full permission there too. But make it an experience. Make it something that you definitely look forward to, even though the project may not be your favorite right now. I think personally, one of my favorite ways is definitely to change things up so that you are not always in the same rut and it doesn't feel mundane to you, but it feels exciting and it feels like it's something new. There was definitely a time where I left like a half-finished project in my basket for months and months. And then I would look at it and be like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm failing because I felt so guilty for leaving it there, for having started it, for having spent the money on it, like all that stuff. But then I did realize the project wasn't waiting to be finished. It was waiting for me to reconnect with why I started it in the first place. And then once I let go of that pressure that I have to get this done, the joy for it actually came back. And what also helps me often is to look back at the pictures of the finished project that drew me in the first place. So if I'm coming across a really gorgeous knit on most times it's on my social media feed or in emails that I get from yarn stores and designers and such. But I come across something, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. And it's usually just the look of it versus the, oh, this is going to be fun to make, which always comes later once I get into the pattern. But normally I'm like, oh, I can figure out how to make this. I'm going to be okay. I'm never thinking about, oh gosh, this is like super intimidating. But I always look at the finished project and imagine having it completed and wearing it and being able to wear it. So when I lose the kind of joy for one of my projects that's in the middle of it, I go back and I look at the finished project and I try to just kind of imagine it being done and me being able to wear it and, blocking it and all that stuff. And that oftentimes brings the joy of the desire to finish it back as well. So if you're in a season where it feels like nothing is moving and you're just sitting there and that project is staring you in the face, remember that even slow progress is still progress. And sometimes that's a little bit of a tough one, right? But there's also busy seasons in our lives. And I know that right now, the time right before summer is so busy for a lot of us moms. And that is even more reason to, number one, understand and really embrace the fact that slow progress is still progress, but also to really build in that knitting time and say, you know what, if it's only 15 minutes, that's great, because that is 15 minutes of me taking some me time, taking a deep breath, and using knitting as my anchor. But you're also building muscle memory. You're creating something from nothing, and that is magical. Don't forget that, right? And if you're a beginner or you just need a boost of knitting joy again, you can grab a free download from my website called 3 Things You Need to Start Knitting. I'm going to pop the link down in the show notes, and I hope you grab it if you are no longer a beginner. That one definitely isn't for you, but you can join us in our Facebook group. Again, the link will be down there. And, if you need an accountability partner, the Facebook group will be the perfect place for you to grab that. You can also get your beginner's guide, Become a Knitter in 5 Simple Steps, if that's something that you are trying to do. Like if you're still a beginner, if you're feeling like, oh, I haven't quite grasped this yet, you can grab that guide. It's still $17 and you can find it at theknittingmamas.com. You can always DM me on Instagram. Tell me what project you're working on. I would love to cheer you on. I would love to kind of give you a little bit of a boost to get through it. Just be sure to hang out over there. It's on Instagram at @theknittingmamas_. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a friend who needs this kind of support or encouragement, be sure to forward this to them, or you can also share it on Instagram in your stories. Happy knitting, my friend. I know you've got this, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best.